My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 36 years old. And 6 months ago, my mother stood outside my apartment at 6:14 in the morning, crying so hard she could barely get the words out. Not because she missed me. Not because she wanted to apologize. She was there because my father was in a hospital room 3 floors above us, and the doctors had just told him that the one person who could make a decision for him was the daughter they had cut out of the family 4 years earlier. Me. The daughter who had been told she wasn't family anymore. The daughter whose number disappeared from my mother's phone. The daughter whose name was removed from my father's emergency contacts. The daughter who had stopped receiving birthday cards, Christmas invitations, and even the annual family photo. They had made their decision very clear. I was out. What they didn't know was that 4 years earlier, when they cut me off, they also left something behind. Something my father had forgotten existed. Something my mother had never known I still had. And when the hospital called me that morning, asking whether I could come immediately because my father had named me in an old document as the person he trusted to make one very specific decision, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes life has a strange sense of timing. And everything that happened between that hospital hallway and the family meeting 3 weeks later, the accusation my sister made against me, the bank statement I found in my father's office, the envelope my mother had hidden for almost 5 years, and the one thing my father finally admitted after spending his entire life refusing to say it. That was the part nobody in my family saw coming. Least of all them. Welcome back to Melodrama Diaries, where quiet people finally tell the stories their families thought they had buried. If you've ever been the person your family only remembers when they need something, stay with me. Because this story isn't about money. Not really. It's about what happens when the person everyone thought they could erase turns out to be the only person who can tell the truth. Now let me take you back. Back 4 years. Back to the night my family decided I wasn't one of them anymore. I lived in a small brick house in Dayton, Ohio, with a blue front door and a kitchen I had remodeled myself. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A narrow driveway. A maple tree that dropped leaves into my gutters every October no matter how often I cleaned them. I worked as a financial compliance manager for a regional manufacturing company. It wasn't glamorous. Mostly spreadsheets, audits, contracts, bank reconciliations, and long meetings where someone always said the phrase, "moving forward," at least 6 times. But I was good at it. I liked numbers because numbers didn't pretend. A number was what it was. A balance sheet didn't smile at you while hiding something. A bank statement didn't tell you that you were imagining things. A contract didn't suddenly change its meaning because somebody got offended. People did that. My family did it constantly. There were 4 of us growing up. My father, Richard. My mother, Elaine. My older sister, Vanessa. And me. Vanessa was 3 years older. Growing up, everyone said we were completely different. Vanessa was loud. Confident. Beautiful in the effortless way that made strangers compliment her before they knew anything else about her. She could walk into a room full of people she had never met and leave 20 minutes later with 3 new friends and someone's phone number. I was quieter. I read. I saved money. I noticed things. My father used to joke that Vanessa could sell sand in a desert and I would still ask to see the invoice. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That's what you do when you're a child and you don't know the joke is actually a warning. My mother always said Vanessa had the personality. I had the responsibility. Those were the roles. Nobody assigned them officially. They just happened. Vanessa needed help. I provided it. Dad needed paperwork. I handled it. Mom needed something paid. I paid it. When Vanessa forgot her college registration deadline, I drove 2 hours to help her fix it. When she missed a car payment, I covered it. When my parents needed someone to review the mortgage refinancing documents, Dad called me. When Vanessa got married, I helped with the wedding deposit. When she divorced 3 years later, I helped her move. There was always a reason. There was always an emergency. And there was always me. I didn't mind at first. That's important. People sometimes assume the family fixer secretly resents everything. I didn't. Not then. Being needed felt like being loved. That's the trap. You don't realize you're trapped when the cage is made out of gratitude. My father used to call me his reliable girl. My mother called me the sensible one. Vanessa called me when she needed money. Nobody noticed that those three descriptions had become the same thing. Then, 4 years ago, my father decided to retire. He was 62. He had owned a small commercial construction company for almost 30 years. It wasn't huge, but it was successful. 12 employees. Several recurring clients. A warehouse outside town. 2 work trucks. A good reputation. My father loved that company. He loved walking through job sites wearing his old boots and telling people what they were doing wrong. He loved shaking hands. He loved being the man who could solve things. But retirement wasn't really retirement. Not in our family. It was supposed to be a transition. My father wanted Vanessa to take over the business. I remember the first time he told me. We were sitting at his kitchen table. Mom was making coffee. Vanessa was scrolling through her phone. Dad leaned back and said, "Your sister is going to run the company." I looked at Vanessa. She looked up. Me? Dad smiled. Who else? I smiled too. Because she was my sister. Because I wanted to be supportive. Because I didn't know yet that I was about to become the only person in the room who had read the company's books. Dad had asked me to review them 6 months earlier. I knew the numbers. I knew the contracts. I knew the payroll. I knew there were 2 clients who represented almost half the company's revenue. I also knew one of those contracts expired in 8 months. And I knew the company had a line of credit that was larger than my parents had ever admitted. None of that meant the company was failing. It meant Vanessa needed training. A lot of it. I said exactly that. She can do it, I told Dad. But she needs at least a year of structured transition. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Mom looked at me. Claire, you always make everything complicated. I remember putting my coffee down. I don't think it's complicated. I'm saying she needs to understand the financial side. Vanessa laughed. I understand money. I didn't answer. She had maxed out 2 credit cards the previous year. But I didn't say that. I was still trying to protect the family picture. Dad nodded. Your sister has instincts. I said, instincts aren't a substitute for cash flow management. That was the first time my father looked at me differently. Not angry. Disappointed. Like I had failed an exam I didn't know I was taking. 3 months later, Dad officially handed Vanessa control of the company. And I started seeing things I couldn't ignore. Invoices paid late. Vendor accounts stretched. Personal expenses charged to company cards. A truck leased for Vanessa's husband. A restaurant renovation billed as client entertainment. Nothing enormous by itself. But together, they formed a pattern. I brought it to Dad privately. He didn't want to hear it. She's learning. Dad, learning is fine. But the company is paying for mistakes. That's what businesses do. No. Businesses pay for operations. They don't pay personal bills. He stared at me. Then he said something I will never forget. You're jealous. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I couldn't believe he said it. Jealous of what? Of your sister. Why would I be jealous of Vanessa? Because she got the company. I looked at him. Then at the folders on his desk. Then back at him. I don't want the company. He leaned forward. You've always wanted to control everything. And suddenly the conversation wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about me. My personality. My supposed need to control. My inability to trust. My jealousy. The actual problem had disappeared. That night I drove home angry. But I still called Vanessa the next morning. I said, "Please be careful. The cash flow is getting tight." She said, "Dad thinks you're overreacting." I know. Then maybe stop trying to run my life. I wasn't. You always do this. And she hung up. That was the beginning. Not the end. The beginning. Over the next year, my parents slowly stopped asking me for advice. Then they stopped asking me to review documents. Then they stopped inviting me to business meetings. Then Vanessa started telling the family that I was trying to sabotage her. I heard it through an aunt. Then a cousin. Then my mother finally said it directly. "You need to stop undermining your sister." I said, "I'm not. You're always questioning her." "I'm questioning decisions that affect Dad's company." Her company. That sentence landed differently. Her company. It was still legally my father's. But the family had already decided the story. Vanessa was the future. I was the problem. Then one Friday afternoon, my father called me. His voice was unusually quiet. "Claire, I need you to come over." I went. He handed me a folder. Inside were bank statements. 3 months. The company's operating account had dropped dramatically. I looked at him. "How bad?" He said, "Bad." "Does Vanessa know?" "Yes." "Then why are you showing me?" He didn't answer. I looked at the numbers again. There were payments I couldn't explain. Large transfers to an account I didn't recognize. I pointed at one. "What's this?" Dad said, "I don't know." I looked at him. "You don't know?" "No." I closed the folder. "Then you need an independent accountant." He shook his head. "If I do that, your sister will think I don't trust her." I stared at him. "Maybe you shouldn't." He looked hurt. And I hated myself for saying it. Because he was my father. Because I still wanted his approval. Because some part of me was still the 15-year-old girl sitting beside him in his truck, listening to him explain how buildings worked. I softened. "Okay. I'll help you figure it out." That was the last time I helped. 2 weeks later, Vanessa found out. She came to my house. She was furious. "You went behind my back." I didn't. "You showed Dad the statements." He gave them to me. "You think you're smarter than me." "No." "Yes, you do." I said, "Vanessa, there are transfers we can't explain." She stepped closer. "You've always hated me." I actually felt tired. "Hate you? You think because you have a career and a house and savings you're better than everyone." I don't. Then prove it. How? Stay out of the business. I looked at her. Fine. She smiled. Good. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "You aren't family when you act like this." I didn't respond. She left. 3 days later, my mother called. She said, "Your sister is very hurt." I said, "I'm sorry." "You need to apologize." For what? For making her feel like she can't succeed. I closed my eyes. "Mom, Dad's company is losing money." "You don't know that." "I've seen the statements." "Your father trusts Vanessa." I almost said, "Then why did he call me?" Instead, I said, "Okay." There was silence. Then my mother said, "Maybe you should take some space from the family." I waited for her to take it back. She didn't. "How much space?" "I don't know." I said, "Okay." And that was it. For years. No birthday dinner. No Christmas. No Thanksgiving. No Sunday calls. Nothing. At first, I waited. Then I stopped. I changed my number once because of work and didn't give it to them. I deleted the family group chat. I stopped checking social media. I went to therapy. I learned that loneliness and peace can feel almost identical at first. The first Christmas alone was awful. The second was easier. By the third, I cooked myself a steak, opened a bottle of wine, and watched an old movie. I was okay. Not happy. But okay. Then, for years after my family cut me off, my phone rang at 6:03 in the morning. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I answered. Is this Claire Bennett? Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. My stomach tightened. Who is this about? There was a pause. Your father, Richard Bennett. I sat up. What happened? He was admitted early this morning. Is he okay? Another pause. He's stable right now. Stable. That word is never reassuring. I got dressed. I drove to the hospital. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Vanessa. I wasn't sure they would even want me there. At the hospital entrance, I stood outside for a moment. Then I walked in. The receptionist asked who I was visiting. Richard Bennett. She checked the computer. Then looked up. Relationship? I hesitated. Daughter. She nodded. Room 418. I walked upstairs. My mother was in the hallway. She saw me. And froze. For 4 years, I had imagined seeing her again. I imagined anger. I imagined tears. I imagined saying everything I'd rehearsed. Instead, she just looked old. Older than I remembered. Her hair was gray at the temples. Her hands were shaking. And the first thing she said was not hello. Why are you here? I looked at her. The hospital called me. She swallowed. How? I don't know. Then a nurse appeared. Ms. Bennett? Yes. Your father has been asking for you. My mother looked at the nurse. Then at me. And something in her expression changed. Not love. Not yet. Fear. The nurse continued. There's a document from several years ago. It lists Claire as his healthcare representative. My mother said immediately, that's old. The nurse looked at her. It's still valid unless revoked. My mother turned toward me. You can't do this. I didn't understand. Do what? Take over. I haven't taken over anything. He's my husband. I know. You're not going to make decisions for him. I don't want to. Then leave. The nurse looked uncomfortable. I looked at my mother. Then I said quietly, I'm not here to fight you. I walked into my father's room. He was awake. Barely. His face looked different. Smaller. He had oxygen under his nose. There were wires everywhere. He turned his head. His eyes opened. And he whispered my name. Claire. I walked to the bed. Hi, Dad. He stared at me. Then he said something so quietly I almost missed it. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what to do with those words. A doctor explained what had happened. A serious cardiac event. Complications. He needed a procedure. Then he asked me whether I understood the decisions that might be required. I said yes. My mother interrupted. I can make those decisions. The doctor looked at the chart. The current document names Claire. My mother said, that document is years old. The doctor said, it remains valid. My father closed his eyes. I looked at him. Do you want me to do this? His eyes opened. He nodded. Just once. That was the first decision he had made for me in 4 years. I stayed. The procedure went well. But the hospital stay lasted 9 days. During those 9 days, my mother and Vanessa came and went. They didn't talk to me unless necessary. Vanessa avoided eye contact. Then, on the 5th day, she approached me in the cafeteria. We need to talk. I said, okay. She sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Dad's company. I almost laughed. Of course. What? Nothing. She leaned forward. Dad wants to sell. Okay. And you know how much it's worth. I can estimate. That's why I need your help. I stared at her. There it was. 4 years. 1 sentence. And suddenly I was useful again. What kind of help? We need to organize everything. Why? Because Dad can't run it. He's retiring. No. He's sick. I looked at her. And? She hesitated. We're in trouble. What kind? Financial. I waited. She looked down. There's debt. How much? She didn't answer. Vanessa. She whispered the number. I felt my chest tighten. It was much larger than I expected. How? She started crying. I thought I could fix it. What happened? I borrowed. From where? She didn't answer. I knew. The transfers. The account I hadn't recognized. Was it company money? She looked away. Vanessa. I was going to put it back. How much? She gave me the number. I sat back. It wasn't fraud on the scale of a corporation. It was worse in a family. Because this was my father. My mother. My sister. And the company my father had built for 30 years. Does Dad know? No. Does Mom? She knows some. I closed my eyes. How long? 3 years. 3 years. I thought about the night my mother told me I was the one tearing the family apart. I thought about every Christmas I spent alone. Every birthday. Every unanswered message I had never sent. And all that time, the thing I had been accused of destroying had been collapsing from inside. Vanessa reached across the table. Claire, please. I looked at her. What do you want? I need you to help us sell it. I didn't answer. Please. I looked down at my coffee. And I remembered something my father once told me. Never sign a contract when you're angry. So I didn't. I said, I'll review the numbers. Her face relaxed. Thank you. But I'm not promising anything. She nodded. That evening, I went back to the hospital. My father was awake. I sat beside him. Vanessa told me about the company. His eyes closed. How bad? I told him. He didn't speak. Then he said, I knew. I stared at him. You knew? Not all of it. How much? He looked toward the window. Enough. I stood up. You knew she was taking money? She was borrowing. Without permission. She said she'd replace it. And you let her? He didn't answer. I sat back down. Dad. He looked at me. I was afraid. Of what? Of losing her. The words were so quiet they almost disappeared. I looked at him. You lost me. He started crying. Not dramatically. Just tears. One after another. I thought you'd be okay. I didn't know what to say. He continued. You're always okay. That sentence hurt more than everything else. Because it explains so much. I had been punished for being strong. They assumed strength meant I didn't need anyone. They assumed reliability meant I couldn't be hurt. They assumed I would always come back. And I hadn't. My father looked at me. I should have protected you. I said nothing. I chose the wrong person. Don't say that. I did. No. I did. I looked at him. You're still my father. He nodded. Then he said, there's something you need to know. I leaned closer. What? The money didn't start with Vanessa. I froze. What do you mean? He looked at the door. Then at me. Ask your mother about the warehouse. What warehouse? He closed his eyes. And the conversation ended because the nurse came in. I thought about those words all night. The warehouse. My father owned a warehouse outside town. I knew that. But I'd never been inside. It was where old equipment and archived company records were stored. The next morning, I drove there. I still had an old key. I wasn't sure if it would work. It did. The warehouse smelled like dust, oil, and cardboard. Rows of shelves. Old machinery. Boxes. Files. I started with the accounting boxes. 3 hours later, I found what my father had been talking about. An old folder. Marked with my mother's handwriting. Not my father's. My mother's. Inside were bank statements. Transfers. Not from Vanessa. From an account I didn't recognize. The transfers went back 6 years. Small at first. Then larger. I kept turning pages. And then I saw the name. Elaine Bennett. My mother. I sat down on an overturned crate. My hands went cold. She had been transferring money out of the company years before Vanessa ever took control. Not for herself. For something else. I kept reading. Mortgage payments. Medical bills. Credit cards. A private loan. And then I found a document from a financial institution. A loan application. The borrower wasn't my mother. It was Vanessa. The loan had been secured against company assets. And my father's signature was on it. I stared at it. Something was wrong. My father had told me he didn't know. But he had signed. I took photographs. I put everything back. Then I found another envelope. It had my name on it. Claire. No address. No stamp. Just my name. I opened it. Inside was a letter. From my father. Dated 4 years ago. The week before my family cut me off. I sat on the warehouse floor and read it. It said, Claire. If you're reading this, I probably didn't have the courage to say this to your face. Your sister is in trouble. Your mother knows. I know. I don't know how to stop it without destroying the family. I am asking you to forgive me for making you carry things that were never yours. If I tell you everything now, Vanessa may lose the company. Your mother says she may hurt herself. I don't know what to do. You have always been the strongest person I know. I hate that I have used that against you. Dad. I read it twice. Then a third time. My mother had never shown me this. My father had written it. And then somehow, 4 years ago, they had cut me off instead. I put the letter back in the envelope. Then I heard footsteps. I turned. Vanessa stood in the doorway. What are you doing here? I stood. I could ask you the same thing. She looked nervous. I was looking for Dad's old equipment records. I held up the envelope. Did you know about this? She looked at it. Then her face changed. Where did you find that? Why? Claire. Did you know? She didn't answer. I said, Vanessa. She whispered, Mom told me. When? After they cut you off. I stared at her. So you knew. I didn't know everything. You knew enough. She started crying. I was scared. Of what? Of losing everything. I almost said, you did. But I didn't. Instead, I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since I found the letter. Why did they blame me? Vanessa looked at the floor. Because Dad said you were going to expose everything. I felt something inside me go still. He said that? Mom did. Why? Because if you stayed, you'd find out. I stared at her. So cutting me off was the plan. She nodded. And you agreed. She cried harder. I didn't know how to stop it. You could have told me. I was afraid you'd hate me. I looked at her. I did hate you. She flinched. For a while. Then I took a breath. But I don't anymore. She looked up. Why? Because hate is another way of staying connected. She didn't answer. I put the letter back in the envelope. I'm going home. Claire. I stopped. What? Are you going to tell Dad? I looked at her. The truth? She nodded. Yes. She closed her eyes. I drove home. That evening, my mother called. I heard you went to the warehouse. Yes. Why? I found Dad's letter. Silence. Claire. Why did you cut me off? She started crying. We didn't know what else to do. You could have told me the truth. Your father wanted to protect Vanessa. And you protected her by destroying me? I didn't mean to. But you did. She didn't argue. For once. Then she said, your father loved you. I know. He still does. I know. Can you please help us? I looked out my kitchen window. Mom, I am helping Dad. What about the company? I'll help him decide what to do. And Vanessa? She needs to take responsibility. My mother began crying again. I let her. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Because I had spent too many years stopping other people's tears from reaching the floor. The next morning, I met with an attorney. Not my family attorney. Mine. Her name was Rebecca Hall. She reviewed the documents. She read my father's letter. Then she looked at me. You understand what you have? Evidence. More than that. She tapped the letter. You have a timeline. She pointed to the bank statements. You have financial records. Then the loan documents. You have signatures. Then she looked at me. And you have something your family has never had. What? Someone who isn't afraid of the truth anymore. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. But maybe those are sometimes the same thing. The hospital released my father 2 days later. He went home under my mother's care. I visited every day. Vanessa came too. The family dynamic was different. Nobody knew what to say. My father finally told everyone the truth. Not all at once. But enough. He admitted that he had signed the loan documents. He admitted that my mother had moved money. He admitted that he had blamed me because he was afraid I would expose everything. Then he said something to Vanessa. You are my daughter. She looked at him. But you have to repair what you broke. Vanessa cried. I will. My father nodded. Then he looked at me. I don't expect you to help. That was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. The company was eventually sold. Not for what Dad had hoped. I said, good. He smiled faintly. Fair. Enough to cover most of the debt. The warehouse was included. The employees were transferred to the buyer. Vanessa had to repay what she could. My mother sold the house. They moved into a smaller place. There was no dramatic courtroom scene. No public confession. No revenge. Just consequences. The family group chat never returned. I didn't ask for it. 3 months after my father came home, he asked me to meet him at the old warehouse. The new owners had cleared most of it. One room remained. My father stood in the doorway. I wanted you to see something. Inside was an old wooden desk. He opened a drawer. There was a small box. He handed it to me. Inside were photographs. Me as a child. Vanessa as a child. Dad. Mom. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. School plays. Family vacations. I looked at them. Then I saw one. I was about 10 years old. I was sitting on my father's shoulders. He was laughing. I didn't remember the picture. My father said, "You were always following me." I smiled. "You carried me." "Yes." He looked at the photograph. "I wish I'd remembered that when you became an adult." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I thought because you could stand on your own, you didn't need me to carry anything anymore." I swallowed. "I needed you." He nodded. "I know now." We stood there quietly. Then he said, "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer immediately. Forgiveness is complicated. People think forgiveness means saying something didn't matter. It doesn't. It means it mattered. And you decide not to let it control the rest of your life. So I said, "I'm working on it." He smiled. "I'll take that." And I did forgive him eventually. Not because he deserved to forget. Because I deserved to stop carrying it. My relationship with Vanessa changed too. Slowly. She started therapy. She got a job. She paid back the company over time. She stopped asking me for money. That mattered more than any apology. One Sunday afternoon, she came to my house. She brought groceries. I laughed. "What?" She said, "I didn't know what to bring." "So you brought groceries? You're always cooking." I opened the door wider. "Come in." She did. We made pasta. For the first time in years, we talked without Mom translating everything. She told me she had been terrified of disappointing Dad. I told her I had spent my life terrified of disappointing everyone. We looked at each other. Then she said, "We were both trying to survive the same family." I nodded. Just in different ways. That night, she left after washing the dishes. She stood at the door. "Claire?" "Yeah?" "I'm sorry." I said, "I know." She hugged me. It wasn't the old kind of family hug. It wasn't performative. No pictures. No audience. Just two sisters standing in a kitchen after midnight. And that was enough. My mother took longer. She still had a habit of explaining instead of apologizing. But eventually she stopped. She began saying, "I was wrong." Those 4 words were harder for her than I expected. My father recovered slowly. He never returned to construction. He started volunteering at a community workshop. He taught teenagers how to build furniture. He told me he liked it better than running a company. Maybe because nobody there expected him to pretend he had everything under control. As for me, I kept my house. I kept my job. I kept my savings. But I changed one thing. I stopped being available automatically. When someone called, I didn't immediately say yes. I asked what they needed. I asked why. I asked whether I actually wanted to help. Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I said no. And I discovered something strange. The people who truly loved me stayed. The people who loved what I provided disappeared. That was the answer I had been looking for all along. 6 months after the hospital incident, my father invited the family to dinner. Just 6 of us. No restaurant. No audience. No expensive wine. My mother cooked. My father grilled. Vanessa brought dessert. I brought nothing. My mother laughed when she saw me. You finally came empty-handed. I smiled. Yes. She nodded. Good. We sat around the table. For once, nobody asked me to solve anything. My father told a bad joke. Vanessa complained about traffic. Mom burned the vegetables. We laughed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the family I had imagined when I was 10. But it was real. And real is better than perfect. After dinner, my father walked me to my car. He stood beside the driver's door. Claire. Yeah? I need to tell you something. What? You were never cut out of the family. I looked at him. That's not what it felt like. I know. He paused. We were ashamed. Of what? Of ourselves. I looked at him. He continued. We made you the villain because it was easier than admitting we had failed. I nodded slowly. I know. He put his hand on the roof of my car. I'm proud of you. Those words were simple. But they hit somewhere deep. Because for years I had thought I needed my family to choose me. I didn't. I needed to choose myself. That was the part nobody had taught me. The thing my parents needed from me wasn't money. It wasn't my job. It wasn't my savings. It wasn't even my ability to understand their finances. The thing they needed was the one thing I had spent my entire life giving away without realizing its value. The truth. And when they finally needed it, I realized something. You can give someone help without giving them control. You can forgive someone without trusting them the same way. You can love your family without allowing them to use love as a contract. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to rescue someone from the consequences of their own choices. I spent 4 years believing my family had rejected me. But looking back now, I think something else happened. They rejected the version of me they could control. The version who paid. The version who apologized first. The version who kept quiet. The version who fixed everything before anyone else had to admit there was a problem. And when that version of me disappeared, they didn't know who I was anymore. Neither did I. It took losing them to find out. I'm still in contact with my parents. I'm still in contact with Vanessa. But things are different. There are boundaries now. Real ones. My mother doesn't know my bank balance. My father doesn't ask me to sign anything without an attorney. Vanessa doesn't borrow money. And I don't explain myself every time I say no. That's the biggest change. I don't explain. Because no is a complete sentence when the person asking has already heard yes too many times. Sometimes I still think about that night 4 years ago. The night Vanessa stood at my door and told me I wasn't family. I remember standing there after she left. I remember the silence. I remember thinking I had lost everything. Now I understand. I didn't lose my family that night. I lost the role they had assigned me. And that was the beginning of getting my life back. If you're the person your family calls when the bills are due, when the crisis happens, when everyone needs someone responsible, remember this. Being reliable is not the same thing as being responsible for everyone. Being generous is not the same thing as owing. And being family does not mean surrendering your boundaries. You can love people and still say no. You can forgive them and still remember. You can help without saving. And you can walk away without becoming cruel. Sometimes walking away is the first honest thing you've ever done. My father once told me that buildings don't collapse all at once. He said you usually see small cracks first. A wall shifts. A door stops closing properly. A window sticks. Something is slightly wrong. You can ignore it. You can paint over it. You can tell yourself it will hold. But eventually, the structure tells the truth. Families are like that too. You can cover cracks with birthdays, with photographs, with Christmas dinners, with family takes care of family. But eventually the structure tells the truth. My family cracked long before I left. I just happened to be the person who finally stopped pretending the wall was straight. And maybe that's why they needed me in the end. Not because I was the strongest. Not because I had the money. Not because I could fix their problems. They needed me because I was the only person left who wasn't willing to lie about what was happening. That's what I gave them. The truth. And for the first time in my life, I didn't give it away for free. That's my story. 4 years of silence. 1 hospital room. 1 forgotten letter. And 1 family that finally learned that cutting someone out doesn't erase what they know. If you've ever been made the villain because you refuse to keep a family secret, tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had to learn that boundaries are not betrayal, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about quiet people who finally stop carrying everyone else's weight. I'll see you in the next one.